Hi YouTube, welcome to the Emporium Outdoors. My name is Michael and welcome to my review of the 2019 Can-Am Defender XT cab. So I've owned the Defender for 2 years and I've traveled 2,100 kilometers in the unit so far. I think that gives me enough experience to provide some feedback for people that are looking to perhaps purchase one of these units or to buy a second-hand one perhaps. So there has been a few model changes since 2020, but the changes are pretty minor. It's more or less the same chassis, so this should apply to any new purchases. So before I get to my overall thoughts on the Can-Am Defender, let's talk about what I use it for. So I obviously use it in my YouTube videos, and I use the machine for primarily getting from my place of unloading, where my truck is, to a place in the bush, setting up camp and doing camp chores and traveling back and forth. I've also used it for hunting and somewhat trail riding. So before I purchased the Defender 2 years ago, I did look into other models, and the only two that came forward were the mid-size Ranger with cab and heat, and the full-size Ranger. That were my two alternatives. Although there are other side-by-sides with cabs, not many of them come with already factory-fitted heat solutions. The reason I wanted a cab and heat was I really wanted to extend the use of my UTV all throughout the year. I live in Alberta, Canada, and the temperature ranges from plus 40 Celsius in the summer to minus 40 in the winter. And the more I could get out of an expensive machine, the more I felt I was getting my value. So I'm going to quickly go over some of the upgrades that I've done to the Can-Am Defender from stock, as well as some of the differences from the base model that you won't get if you don't opt for a higher package. So starting from the front of the machine, I've added a light bar. This was an Amazon special, probably about 80 bucks plus the wiring costs. Because this is the XT model, it came with the XT brush bar at the front and also the winch. So the winch is a 4,500 pound Can-Am branded super winch, and I haven't had any problems with it. I did change out the steel cable to a synthetic. In my opinion, switching out the steel cable for a synthetic cable is a worthwhile upgrade. It's a lot easier to deal with and it's a lot safer too. Obviously, with this being the cab model, it does have the glass windshield, also has the wiper and the wiper fluid that's built in, so you can clean it when you're out in the brush. So this is a 3-position windscreen. I'll just show you that real quick. So the windshield can be either closed, it can be latched, or she can go all the way up. So you can drive with the windshield all the way up, but I wouldn't go very quickly and not over tough terrain. It does want to rock around a little bit, and I think there's more stress on there than you would like. I've had good success with the windshield. I've had one stone chip in 2 years, which I had dealt with by a professional glass company, and they sealed it and it didn't propagate, so that was very lucky. So moving along the outside, I did add the side mirrors. The tires are actually stock, so these are the Bighorn 2.0s, and they've been fine. These are the 27-inch. The doors are obviously standard with the cab package, and also the rear window that hopefully you can see. This does have the slide in the back, which some of the newer models don't have, and I really like the slide. So moving to the back, I do have the Can-Am rack that goes in the bed, and this has been excellent. I actually love this. I also have these Coplin Rhino grippers, which I actually put my tripod on there, but you can put a shovel, whichever you like. That works really well. You can actually fit 2 of these particular racks and extend the coverage, but with this custom box that I built in the back, just means I can get to anything very quickly, and it's mud, snow, waterproof, which is great. And on the inside, we have a couple more additions. So I do have the cargo nets for the kind of sub glove box. There's like an area where you can put a net in. I'll try and show you a picture of that. And that works out really great. I also have some camera mounts that I've put onto the grip bar for the passenger. And this is where I mount my camera equipment for transport and for filming, which is obviously unique to me. The heater is in the bottom. Again, this is going to be if you have the cab package, or you can buy the cab aftermarket as well as the heater, but I'll talk about that in a little while. But overall, it's a very comfortable machine. I have added under the middle seat, there is an additional bucket. Hopefully you can see that right here, which is removable. As standard, there's a bucket under the main passenger seat, and there is a bucket you can fit to the driver's seat, which I would actually like. I did add the switch for the light bar, which is pretty simple. Go on, up S. And as you can see, my dog Esme just loves it. As soon as I do anything with the Can-Am, she thinks we're going for a ride, and she wants to be right there. There are 2 drink holders in the front, and also a glove box under the front dash there, which is very useful. There is a removable glove box, which I've never removed, and I think it's pretty pointless. I'm sure some people get use of it, but I'd rather have a bigger glove box that's not movable. It's a bit of a gimmick in my opinion, but that's fine. So one other accessory which isn't Can-Am exactly related is when you're working on this machine, because of the weight, it's a little hard to jack up. What I did do is go out and purchase a ATV lift or motorcycle lift. They have different names. I think this has a capacity of about 1,500 pounds, but because of the large platform, it really does give you a lot of lifting capability very safely on a large machine. I can lift the whole front end up and easily get my tracks on, take a wheel off, do inspections, grease and etc. This is a pneumatic model which I can pump up with my compressor, but it can also be done with a foot pump too, and it latches at different points along the extension of the platform. Love this thing. It wasn't very expensive. I think I picked it up from Princess Auto for probably about $150 on sale, and it's worked flawlessly. I love it. It's a big time saver for me to move the machine up and down, plus it adds a huge amount of safety for me. The other nice thing about the Defender is if you're just traveling with 2 people, there is a drop down divider that you can put down to put drinks and other things and stop you sliding around if you wished. But the seats are big enough for 2 full-size men and maybe a smaller person in the middle, or 3 reasonably sized people across the bench. I've never found it tight, and with 2 people and 2 dogs it's perfect, and with 1 person and 2 dogs that's fine too. I have driven a couple of times with 3 people and I haven't found it a problem at all. But the major accessory that I purchased was the Apache 360 LT tracks, and they're pretty expensive, but this makes this machine a year-round 4-season machine in Canada. So let's touch on some of the problems that I've had with the machine over the last 2 years. So within the first few weeks I noticed there was a lot of vibration when switching to 4-wheel drive that I couldn't pick up on the initial test drive, but obviously once I got out and using it, I noticed there was vibration in the steering. So I did take it back to the Can-Am dealer, and they did replace under warranty the drive shaft that goes to the front differential. So the second problem I had was the buttons for the windows. They failed. I actually had 2 buttons fail, and that was replaced under a recall. That was a known issue, and I think all future Can-Ams have the replacement buttons. Another issue I had, which I probably caused, was I had the alignment of the front wheels go out. When I had the tracks on, I got stuck in a particularly bad place and I had to winch the machine out with the tracks on, and it did push one side out. I had to take it to the dealers and they realigned it. So that was kind of my fault. That wasn't the fault of the machine. But with tracks on, you are putting a lot of strain on those hubs because of the weight and size, obviously. I also had an issue initially with cold starting, but I've actually put that down to perhaps the battery not being prepped by the dealer before I took ownership. I took ownership in November 2 years ago, and it was pretty cold that day. I have a video that I'll link to. Ever since that time, I've never had a problem starting it, and it's probably because the battery's become more conditioned over time. When it's parked in the garage, such as now, I've always got a battery tender to keep the battery nice and topped up. And even though it won't get cold in this particular shop, I feel that's a good way to keep the battery ready for going out in the bush. So getting to the pros and cons of the Can-Am Defender, what are the cons? So my big con is it's heavy. As configured, currently it's probably pushing about 1,800, 1,900 pounds with all my equipment and myself in the machine. So it's pretty heavy. If you add the tracks as well, that bumps it up by probably another 200-300 pounds. So maybe fully loaded, ready for winter with the tracks on, I'm pushing maybe 2,200 pounds or plus. So it's a heavy machine. So the other con is it's a pretty expensive machine. I paid about 26,000 Canadian dollars for this machine, and I probably put about $1,000 into just general accessories. And obviously with the tracks, that was another 6,500 Canadian dollars, because you don't just buy the tracks, you have to buy the track mounting kit. There's a DPS module you have to buy so that the tracks react correctly with the power steering. And there's also a snow kit that goes on to isolate the CVT transmission as well as filter the engine air intake. So it's not just the price of the tracks, there's some other bits that they make you buy to make sure that you pay all the monies. And the other downside is I find Can-Am accessories pretty expensive. Even for those small buckets that go into the seats, you're looking at $120 for a plastic bin. And it's not like you can get them from somewhere else, or you could probably make a wooden one, but the way that they work and they clip in and out is so nice, I end up buying them anyway. So what are the pros? So overall the machine is fantastic and it's performed better than I expected. It is a very large machine and I was initially worried about the width because it's probably one of the widest machines out there, but I haven't found that as a significant drawback even in tight trails. There's been maybe 1 or 2 instances while I've been driving over the last 2 years where I've had to find another route or cut a tree or fuss around because I couldn't fit. The cab obviously makes it a lot taller and you have to be a bit more careful because you have the doors, etc. But I haven't sustained any major damage on the machine. I haven't broken anything. And the plastics have held up extremely well over the last 2 years. No major scratches, dings or tears or damage. And it looks pretty good for 2 years of use and 2,100 kilometers later. The maneuverability is very impressive. The turning circle on this unit is very tight compared to how big it is. And it turns around just as easily as even very small 50-inch machines that I've driven in the past and owned. I find it a very easy and comfortable machine to drive, and my wife drives it too, and she loves driving it. It's very much like a regular vehicle. It does have 3 modes inside, one of which is the eco mode, then there's the normal mode, and then the work mode. Each one has its own little feature. The majority of the time I actually drive in the eco mode, and I get amazing gas mileage, and a tank of fuel will last me a weekend plus. It's often I come back with 3/4 of a tank left, and I probably won't fill up until I've done maybe 2 or 3 trips sometimes. So it's really good on fuel economy. Initially I was skeptical about the powered windows. I wasn't sure why I would need powered windows in a UTV. More basic is better in my opinion. But having used them for a couple of years, they have been a really big bonus. It allows me to control the window, which is quite a distance away. I can't actually reach it from the driver's position, but I can drop the window if I want to talk to somebody, or Esme wants to pop her head out, or I want to let some more air in. It's actually become very invaluable. I can see why they put them in now. The 3-position tilt-out windshield has also been much better than expected. I use it with the screen up sometimes in summer. It's great obviously closed in winter because that keeps all the heat in. But having it in that intermediary position where it's just open slightly and then opening the rear slide gets a lot of airflow through the cab. It's not like a wind that causes problems, but just a gentle breeze that comes through and really works well. The heater puts out a phenomenal amount of heat in winter, and I haven't had any problems even down to the -30s with the cab staying nice and warm. And it does defrost all the windows. You can start it up first thing before you start packing up camp, and the machine will be nice and warm for you to get in when you're ready to go. That's probably one of my favorite things. So the service interval on these machines is quite incredible as well. I think it's roughly 2,000 kilometers before you do your first service after the initial braking period. Whereas I'm normally used to about 500 kilometers and then it's time for an oil change, etc. This is actually quite impressive that it runs a lot more. But when you think about the type of engine, it probably makes a lot more sense. It's a very robust, tried and tested Rotax engine. So I'm very pleased about the cost of running the machine is actually quite low. Another benefit with going with Can-Am and the Defender is the accessories. They're kind of endless. As I mentioned, they are expensive, but there's an accessory if you're looking for something to do a specific function. They have a whole catalog of things that you can add to this to make it do whatever you want it to do. So an important note on the cab models: if you are considering buying a Can-Am Defender and you don't want to splash for the cab from the factory, there is an option to buy the cab and the heater and add that later on. I would probably advise against that if you can. Two main reasons: it will cost you more money. It's going to take a lot of effort to put the cab in and the heater and run all the infrastructure to make that work. And secondly, when it's fitted from the factory, there's a lot of draft proofing that goes in behind as they assemble it, which I believe doesn't come with the pieces you buy to make the cab system. So if you're interested in buying the cab model, I would get it as configured from the factory. So my other tip would be, if you plan to install tracks on your unit, is to buy the HD10 model, because the tracks do suck a lot of power from the engine. I normally run in high, but there's points where the snow is very thick and you have to really push through it. You're going to have to want to go down to low. So more power is better. So two improvements I wish they would make on this particular model in the future is to change the four-wheel drive system. At the moment you have two-wheel drive, four-wheel drive, rear differential lock, and you have a Versa lock system in the front, which is like a viscous coupling in the front. So it's not true front differential lock. It would be nice to have a switch where I could lock both front and rear differential or put it into the auto mode. That would be very useful, but it's not a feature on the Defenders as far as I know. The other feature I'd like to see is for them to move away from the 27-inch tires as standard and actually go up to a minimum of 28s, maybe 30s as a factory option without all the expense. I think the 27s are fine, but bigger would be definitely better, and it would be nice if it was just standard across all of the Can-Ams. So in summary, I've really enjoyed owning the Can-Am for 2 years. I have had a few hiccups with it that have been put right, but overall the machine has been extremely dependable. It's done everything I've asked it of, and the carrying capacity is probably some of the best on the market. If you want to buy this as a work play machine, I think it's ideal. If you want to use it for overland, UTV camping, etc., as I do, I don't think there's a better model out there, if I'm honest. And I will probably buy another one in the future. I normally keep my UTVs for about 3 years and then cycle them out for a new model. So I'll probably stick with Can-Am, I think, when time comes for me to swap this out. The huge benefit is I've obviously bought into the ecosystem, so I have the track system, all the accessories that I can move across to a newer model if that's the way I want to go. I am interested in the Defender Pro Limited, which is the long wheelbase. It still has 4 wheels as opposed to a 6-wheeler, but it does have the 6-foot bed in the back. I'm not sure if that would work for me. I like the idea of it because of that large bed, and I'd love to build some sort of camper in the back of it. That would be my ideal machine, but I think it might be a little bit long in order to get through the trails, backing up, etc., etc. I think the tracks would still work on that model. I don't think it would cause a problem, but I'll probably be sticking with Can-Am for my next purchase. So that kind of sums up my review of the Can-Am Defender XT cab. If you'd like to see some videos of me using the Can-Am, take a look back on my channel at previous videos, and there's lots in there over the last 2 years. So if you have any questions about the Can-Am, please leave them in the comments below and I'll certainly get back to you. But until next time, take care, and goodbye from Simon and Esme. Bye for now. And as always, thank you very much for watching. If you like my videos, leave me a comment, maybe a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe.